This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
And welcome everybody to episode 41 of the Animanicast.
Hey, do you have any idea what time it is?
Lunchtime.
Lunchtime?
We're from Salmonella's coffee shop. Eat our food and you're bound to drop. Then the only thing that's left to do, head to the party and spew, spew, spew. Salmonella's. We're Beatrice.
And welcome to the Animanicast. We are the only podcast that is dedicated to the animated television series, the Animaniacs. Here we explore the series episode by episode, revisiting all of the cultural references and gags, and in the end, we give the episode a water tower rating. I am Joey, and joining me are my co-hosts, Nathan.
You cooing with me?
And Kelly.
Hi.
Hey, Kelly. I'm not cool with you.
Okay.
So, today we are discussing episode 41 of the Animaniacs, which includes the segments Buttermilk, It Makes a Body Bitter, Broadcast Nuisance, and Raging Bird. It's a nice segment, or a nice episode, I should say.
Yeah.
Guys, what do you think about this cartoon today, in a few words? Nathan, start with you.
I thought that had two strong segments. I don't know.
And Kelly, what about you?
It was pretty funny.
All right. Well, let's get right into it. But I'll tell you what, before we do, Nathan, when did this episode, Wilbur, when did this episode first premiere?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. Joey, this premiered on Monday, November 15th of 1993. This was when 13 Cuban refugees landed in Florida after stealing a crop duster in Cuba. And also, Howard Stern's radio show premiered in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina on WYAV 104.1 FM. And Joe Buttafuoco was sentenced to 6 months in prison.
Oh, Joey Buttafuoco. Yes, I would hear about Joey Buttafuoco and Amy Fisher quite often in the early 90s in middle school.
There you go. This was that time.
Yeah,
so.
there was a very popular real life soap opera, and if you want to look into that. But
yeah,
it's a long
it's a funny
story.
name.
It's a funny name, funny to say. Now, I just remember everyone on the school grounds at my middle school was just calling me Joey Buttafuoco. Yeah. Anyway, so, all right. So, let's get right into today's episode. And, of course, we start off with our favorite segment, Newsreel of the Stars.
Oh.
Newsreel of the Stars.
Newsreel of the Stars. I thought we were going back in time at the beginning of this.
First episode again, I guess.
I know, 41 episodes in, and we're still showing Newsreel of the Stars from time to time.
Yeah.
Well, it's the first season. We have to keep that in mind, and
yeah.
Who knows? People could be watching Animaniacs and
starting with this
they could
episode.
be totally confused and not knowing what the heck's going on.
Yeah. They're like, I've heard enough about this Joey Buttafuoco. Let me see what else is on.
I need some exposition on this new show, this cartoon show here. And, of course, then it showed, here's the show's namey, too, as a variable.
The audience is like, wait, what is this show called?
This is like total this is classic intro Animaniacs, this one.
This could have been the first episode.
It really could have been. And then we get to see a commercial for a parody of Milk It Does a Body Good, called Buttermilk It Makes a Body Bitter.
Sure, you may turn away from me now, but as long as I keep drinking my buttermilk, I can count on growing up with a serious lactose intolerance. And even though I won't be able to digest the stuff, I'm gonna keep drinking my buttermilk.
So, as she gets large, bigger and older and everything, she's drinking buttermilk, but yet she keeps drinking it, and she never forgets of how much of a jerk he was. So she puts a big bomb in his, in his hands and walks away, and he blows up.
Buttermilk. It makes a body bitter.
What do you know?
Do you remember these commercials, Nathan? You were a little young for these.
Vaguely.
commercials.
I mean, they changed their got milk kind of slogan.
Yeah, they went to
but
the got milk with the mustache and everything like that. But I remember these quite often. Do you, Kelly?
Yeah, I remember them.
Here is a quick sample of this kind of commercial. Very similar. So here we go. Let's see if this is the right commercial.
Michael Martin, I don't even exist in your eyes, because all you see is a person's outside. Well, I'm a beautiful person inside, and I'm drinking milk. Do you know what that means? I'm going fast in these years.
The milk's given me a lot of what I need for strong bones, beautiful skin, and a great smile. And by the time my outside catches up with my inside, I'll have long since outgrown you.
And you'll be history.
Ooh.
Milk. It does a
and
body
then she
good.
blew him up.
And then she blows him up. Kaboosh! Yeah, there's a bunch of those on YouTube, including one with a boy kind of talking to this girl in a swimsuit. Looks like he's just talking to some woman who's ignoring him, who came off the Baywatch set or something like that. That was an interesting commercial campaign, very memorable for kids at the time. I remember it got me to drink my milk. I thought, I'm going to be big and strong. There you go.
No.
Well, there's also two other segments in here of good idea, bad ideas.
Yeah.
It's time for another good idea, bad idea.
The first one we have is having breakfast served to you in bed. The bad idea, however, was having tennis balls served to you in bed. Very cute.
Silly.
I like that because all the tennis, including the one that ended up in Mr. Skullhead's mouth at the end, which was funny. And then, of course, there was another one, which was the good idea was whistling while you work. And the bad idea was whistling while you eat.
Yeah.
Which is definitely a bad idea.
Yeah, I think both of these were bad ideas to have the bad idea, and good ideas for the good idea.
Yeah, I agree. Which of those two good idea, bad ideas, which one was the best? Kelly, what do you think of those two segments?
I like the serving breakfast in bed or serving tennis balls in bed. I thought that one was funny.
Nathan, what about you?
I like that one too, just because I like getting served breakfast in bed, and whistling while you eat is just gross.
I like the whistling. I like the whistling while you eat.
Creative though.
I like the whistling while you eat because the sound was just too funny, and it really was pretty gross. He got kicked out of Joe's Diner or whatever. I don't know. They're both really good idea, bad ideas, I think. So let's go on to the first cartoon, however.
Ooh.
And our first one is called Broadcast Nuisance. Broadcast Nuisance was written by Gordon Bresick and Charlie Howell and was directed by Greg Reyna and Kirk Tingblad. I love that name. And Nathan, can you tell us what the heck happens in Broadcast Nuisance?
I'm trying to figure it out myself. No. So we have Dan Anchorman,
yes,
who is a famous anchorman, apparently, I guess. But he's also kind of a jerk. And he's
definitely
waiting for his food to come. And lo and behold, it's the Warners that are bringing him his sandwiches. Except they don't do a really good job at it, and they eat his sandwich, and then they try to give him another sandwich, and anyways, he gets upset and throws him out without giving a tip. And
big mistake.
Big mistake. You got to give those Warners a tip, because they're going to make your life miserable. So they annoy Dan Anchorman nonstop. They end up getting into the control room, squishing his head, and all sorts of fun little things to him, taking him into other episodes until he finally gives in and decides to give the Warners a tip, I guess. So
yeah,
there you go. So pretty much it, I think.
Yeah, well, he also gets carted off to the insane asylum or something.
And they kind of take over as Anchorman, I guess.
Yes, they became the Anchorman at the end. So it was this episode has some interesting behind the scenes stuff as well.
Yeah,
stuff I did not realize until just before recording. Nathan, why don't you go ahead and tell us what's the story with this?
Yeah, originally Dan Anchorman was named Slam Fondlesome, which he's based, of course, off of Sam Donaldson. Yeah, Sam Donaldson. So it makes sense that his name's similar to that. But anyways,
but a very kind of, I mean, when you're talking about it, his name's, what was it?
Slam Fondlesome.
Slam Fondlesome. So a very kind of innuendo name.
Yeah,
not so.
Not as generic as Dan Anchorman.
No, which kind of sounds like Dan Rather, I suppose.
Yeah, I was thinking Dan Rather. I was like, oh, he must be Dan Rather, I guess? Like,
no.
He doesn't really look like...
Yeah, no, he looks a lot like Sam Donaldson.
Okay.
So, yeah, Sam Donaldson, I think he's retired, but he's still doing, things. I still see him every now and then commenting on stuff.
Well, then there was also major edits to the episode itself, because Steven Spielberg didn't like the amount of violence that the Warners were doing to Fondlesome. So he had them cut out a lot of that, as well as a cameo from Slappy the Squirrel.
Yeah.
And there was, I guess, Yakko doing a William F. Buckley imitation.
Yes.
And everything that followed that. So
they had to re-record that, and of course every time they had to say Slam Fondlesome was changed to Dan Anchorman. Mm-hmm. So I thought, wow, okay. So interesting censorship, and if you look online, I'll have the actual link in the show notes where people can see what this episode looked like, or at least a section of it looked like originally. And looking at it online, I do remember some of the stuff that went on. It looked vaguely familiar, like them putting a hot towel on his face and
scalding him.
And then Dot also does kind of a Zsa Zsa Gaborish impression as well. So, some stuff going on. It's actually, the amount of stuff they took out was about a 2 or almost a 3-minute section.
Yeah, there's a
stuff is
good
taken
amount
out.
Cut out just from that. So
yeah, so as we just mentioned, so he's a parody of Sam Donaldson. Was an anchorman on Primetime Live for many years. He definitely had kind of a weird hair thing going on. I don't know if he actually had a toupee, but his hairstyle was gelled over and didn't look that natural. Do you remember ever watching Sam Donaldson as a kid, Kelly?
Yeah, he always looked like he was in a bad mood.
Yeah, when every other anchorman just kind of looks like hi, I'm your friendly anchorman here to tell you the news. Sam Donaldson is there to tell you what's wrong with everything that's wrong with the nation, and just looked like a pessimistic kind of guy.
Yeah, not a happy man.
Yeah, and of course his co-host was Diane Sawyer, who on this is called Duane Sewer, I believe, and
something like that. Yeah.
So she, and they did a good job of caricaturing her as well. Much more pleasant attitude and everything like that. So interesting to see the caricatures of these two people. Now, when it comes to the crew, this is interesting. I think the animation company that did this was, I believe, the same one that did Meatballs or Consequences and Plain Pals and things like that. And one of the reasons you could kind of tell is, well, the Warners are drawn in that kind of different style.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, but you can also see some of those cameos by some of the folks that we've seen before in previous episodes. Do you remember the I've got to go export some iron ore guy?
Better go! Gotta help the wife export some iron ore!
Well, he's in this. Again, crazy glasses guy. He's a cameraman in here. There's also Elvis.
Yeah.
Who was one of the people working behind the scenes. And Norman Bates was seen a couple times in this episode. One time he's shown lining up with that whole line up, everybody. And he's wearing a dress. So spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen Psycho, but I thought that was a cute gag right there. And of course, it looks like Norman Bates is also taking Dan Anchorman to the psych ward, or perhaps the psycho ward at the very end. He has a very off. His head is incredibly small. It does not match up with his body, but other than that, it definitely looks like Norman Bates right there. So there's also just weird stuff going on with the people in the in line. There's one guy whose pants are sagging really low.
Butt crack man.
Yeah, butt crack man is in there.
That's not
There's a guy
necessary.
whose shirt doesn't fit and his belly button showing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a woman who looks like she's wearing a bib or something. I don't really know. The caricatures are always pretty extreme, and I always like looking at the people in the background of these cartoons.
This company does do a good job with.
Yeah, and again, it does feel a little bit. I mentioned this before in Plain Pals. It feels a little bit more like Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah, a lot of time. Like when Dot spits out food, I was like, that's Ren and Stimpy. And when they're doing a wrestling match, I'm like, that's Ren and Stimpy. Like that's
it kind of had that exaggerated thing going on.
Yeah.
Now, there's a song right here. It's called Salmonella. Salmonellas.
Yeah.
So Sam N Ellas, and of course that's a takeoff of the bacterial infection of salmonella disease, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or poisoning. And at the end, it says, "We're Beatrice." Kelly, did that reference at all come to you when they said, we're Beatrice?
Yeah, I didn't get that.
No, I didn't get it at all.
I didn't either. I was going, I had to look that sucker up. So, there was a company called Beatrice, go figure. But they were on a bunch of things like different food commercials and stuff like that, like Peter Pan peanut butter and Orville Redenbacher, and they've since been bought out by ConAgra Foods and stuff like that. But here's an example of We're Beatrice, and I remember this cartoon, or not cartoon. I remember this commercial because this is for Peter. Excuse me. Let me try that again. I remember this commercial because it's for Peter Pan peanut butter.
Say that 3 times fast.
Picky pickle leader. No, wait. Picky pickle picker. No. Peter Pan peanut butter. And whenever I see a jar of it, to this day, I have this song in my head. So let's see if this works. So, yeah. So it's just a bunch of people dancing and eating Peter Pan peanut butter.
So peanutty because it's made from the best quality peanuts in the world.
Okay, get ready for it. They're going to say, we're Beatrice. It's so subtle at the end, we're Beatrice, that I can see why I never heard it. Besides, when people are dancing around eating peanut butter, that's what you're paying attention to.
And then stop paying attention when they're...
Yeah. And it doesn't have a very good jingle at the end.
Commercial over.
It's not like, it's like, and now that was the end of the commercial. I want something like, bye, Menon.
Yeah.
Like, I'll remember that. Or Nabisco.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all that I got. We're Beatrice. I'm like, oh, gosh. No wonder they got bought out by ConAgra. They couldn't nail down that thing. But anyway. There's also Wolf Spitzer in this right here.
Spritzer or something.
Spritzer. Mm-hmm. Spitzer. Like a white wine spritzer.
Mm-hmm.
Wolf Spitzer, who... caricature Wolf Blitzer, who's still on CNN. I looked him up. Apparently, he just started on CNN in the 1990 or 91. So that's why they were saying you'll never make it on CNN, I suppose. Nathan mentioned William F. Buckley. They call him William F. Yackley in this cartoon. I have a little recollection, I should say, of William F. Buckley. He always just talked like a British person, and I don't think he was even British. He was just a conservative commentator who always looked kind of stuck up. Any memories of William F. Buckley at all, Kelly?
Not really. I The only reason I even know of him, I think the genie in Aladdin does an impression of him.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I know. I was like, I don't know who... I don't know who
It all
his
comes
Willie
back to Disney
Buckley
films.
is, but...
It really does all come back to Disney films somewhere or another.
Master, there are a few addendas, some quid pro quo.
Don't talk back to me, you big blue lout!
And of course, there was the reference to Space Oddity by
David Bowie.
Ground control to Major Tom. Commencing countdown, engines on.
Okay, so when they get into the control room, there's tons of stuff going on. There's a reference to Gilligan's Island. They throw him into Gilligan's Island.
Yeah, he starts jumping TV stations, basically.
Yeah, he becomes black and white. Mm-hmm. He goes into a Godzilla film and immediately gets crushed by Godzilla.
Yeah, which I like the animation of his crushed face and everything.
Oh, do you remember Bambi versus Godzilla at all?
I remember basically.
Okay, Kelly doesn't.
Yeah, I do remember this. I can't remember what it's from now.
Okay,
though.
I've seen it on like I used to go to like things like the Spike and Mike's Twisted Animation Festivals or something, things like that. Every now and then you could see something. It's a very short cartoon called Bambi versus Godzilla, and it's a black and white cartoon, and it basically just shows Bambi just eating grass, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Godzilla's foot comes down and crushes Bambi. There you go. That's all there is. All there is to Bambi versus Godzilla is Godzilla wins.
Yeah, it's just an absurd cartoon.
It's again a video. I'll have it in the show notes. It's only literally about a minute and a half long because the battle, this is much shorter than Batman versus Superman.
Yeah.
But that foot crushing Dan Anchorman right there was very similar to that cartoon. And of course there's a Hulk Hogan reference. There's Bulk Logan. Looks like Hulk Hogan right there.
Yeah.
And at the very end they do a Dennis Miller "We are out of here," and they kind of do this scribble on a piece of paper.
Be real nice to people who handle your food.
Or it's sad news.
As for us, we are out of here.
Dennis Miller was the anchorman, or what do they call him? The weekend update host on Saturday Night Live. And everyone, that would be his little sign off right there.
This week an Iranian ship fired machine gun rounds at an NBC nightly news helicopter, just missing the news crew. Spokesman for the Iranian government apologized later in the day, saying, "Hey, we're sorry. We thought it was the Today Show helicopter." Guess what, folks? That's the news, and I am out of here. Good night.
Lots of different references, but there's also tons of different gags in this one. Guys, what are some of the moments in this cartoon that really stuck out that you really thought were clever or cool?
I like that they were protesting in front of the news building. And, chanting that Cheapskate Anchor has to go and we protest. I thought that was cute.
Hey, hey, ho, ho, Cheapskate Anchor's got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, Cheapskate Anchor's got to go.
Nathan, what about you?
I liked when they were drawing on his face and doing a weather report on, I don't know.
Oh, for the headlines.
Yeah,
and
the
everything.
headline.
And now, tonight's News Time Live headlines.
Not those headlines, these headlines. But first, our forecast. Large pointy things here, followed by big fluffy gray things here. Isn't video technology keen? Ooh, it looks like some really bad dental work here. And if you're driving through here, don't worry, there's no brain in sight.
I just thought it was kind of cool that Dan Anchorman actually locked them into the control room to
he should
begin
have thought better about that. Like, why does he lock us in here?
I guess he wants us to direct. But one of the things that I could not figure out was who the heck was doing Dan Anchorman's voice.
Yeah,
and
it
I
sounded
recognized
really
it.
familiar. Yeah, exactly.
I recognized this voice. And it took me. I didn't want to look at the credits.
I finally looked at it, and then I was like,
I didn't look. I'm glad I got it right. Kelly, do you know who does Dan Anchorman's voice in this?
No, but he did sound familiar.
Nathan, he is voiced by
Phil Hartman.
Phil Hartman.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
There was a time, like, when he first comes on, I was like, that sounds like Phil Hartman. And then, like...
Yeah.
And then I was like, no, it can't be. It doesn't quite sound like him anymore.
Yeah, of course, Phil Hartman was... he did voice work for The Simpsons.
Mm-hmm.
Lionel Hutz.
Yeah.
Attorney at Law. And, of course, who was the actor's name again? It was...
Troy McClure.
Troy McClure! And he was on News Radio and Saturday Night Live and everything like that. So, yeah, that voice...
He was going to be Zach Brannigan.
He was, yeah. Before he, unfortunately, gosh, he was killed by his wife.
Yeah, very tragic and sad.
Yeah. So, but yeah, he was about to be Zach Brannigan's voice on Futurama and everything like that. So the character is very similar to Phil Hartman's, it was basically written for Phil Hartman to begin with. I believe Matt Groening had said, many times that that whole character was just meant for him.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I thought that was kind of cool. Always nice to see Phil Hartman's voice popping up and old stuff that I had not expecting him to be in. So that was awesome. Overall, just a cool intro. Introductory cartoon, I should say. I did not really remember this cartoon that much. Yeah,
me neither. And I felt bad for Anchorman for a lot of it because I was like, really, he shouldn't have to pay for food he didn't get. And I don't know. So from the get-go, I was kind of not feeling sorry. So maybe the Warners shouldn't have been such jerks from the very beginning. I felt like they were being more of a jerk than he was because
That'll be $6, and remember, it's customary to tip 15%.
You expect me to pay for this? I didn't even get a sandwich.
Oh, I guess you're the turkey on a roll.
Yeah, but they did set up Dan Anchorman as a huge jerk to those people.
He was a jerk to everyone else.
Do you have any idea how truly useless you people are? I am surrounded by untalented incompetence.
I wish they hadn't eaten his food at least, if Dot didn't just oh, I'm famished. I was like, oh, that I would cut that out and then have it oh, we gave you your food. Now where's our tip? And then he's like,
okay.
If you want to make him more of a villain, that's what you have to do is...
Yeah, well, I suppose so. Well, I guess we don't have anything else to say about this one. We'll just move on over to our next cartoon.
Okay.
All right.
This is Maurice LaMarche, the voice of Squid the Pigeon from the Goodfeathers and Animaniacs. And you're listening to the Animanicast. Don't hit me, Pesto!
When the birds hit the street looking for food to eat, that's Goodfeathers.
That's Goodfeathers.
And I'm cooing at you and you're cooing at me, that's Goodfeathers. Take no guff cause they're tough, but they're stuffed, no cream puffs, that's Goodfeathers.
So, the next cartoon is called Raging Bird. And Raging Bird was written by Deanna Oliver, and it was directed by Leonard Robinson. And Kelly, could you tell us what happens in this cartoon, Raging Bird?
I certainly can.
Awesome.
Raging Bird is the Goodfeathers are watching I guess you'd call it a boxing or beaking match, and Bobby's girlfriend totally manipulates him into fighting the current reigning champ because she's like, well, he's a good-looking guy, and he's what you think he's good-looking? Well, I don't know. A lot of people think he's good-looking, but you could beat him, and he falls for it. So he decides to confront the reigning champ. Pretty boy Robin?
Yeah, that's his name.
That's his name. And so he knocks Bobby down, and then he says that he's going to fight him. And then we have sort of this Rocky montage. Max comes and decides that he's going to train him because he wants to get back at Pretty Boy Robin. And Max is obviously heavily inspired by the Burgess Meredith character in Rocky, and he keeps calling him a bum, and you're a bum, and you're gonna lose because you're a bum. And there's a montage, and Bobby's punching, meat in a meat locker, and he gets frozen, and then he's running up the stairs just like Rocky does in the movie, and you actually see Rocky on the stairs. And a lot of boxing movie homages. Obviously, Raging Birds is a nod to Raging Bull. And so then they finally fight, and it looks like he's not going to do so well, but finally knocks out Pretty Boy Robin and wins, only to have the prize and his girl taken by the God Pigeon.
Of course. This was a funny cartoon. It was a good Goodfeathers, I would say.
It's a good Goodfeathers.
It's a good Goodfeathers. And it starts off with a theme song that I believe this is its first time on the cartoon.
They have not shown this theme song before this.
It starts with a kind of an introductory That's Amore parody with That's Goodfeathers. And this song gets in my head quite a bit. I don't know why, but...
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I was like,
But the three boxing movies, Kelly had mentioned just now that there's lots of boxing references to, various boxing movies. The three that I could find were On the Waterfront, Raging Bull, and Rocky.
Which I haven't seen any of those. So
I have seen most of parts of other Rocky films. I don't think I've ever seen the first Rocky film all the way through. It's like one of those things where it's on cable and you're kind of flipping channels and you're like, I'll watch 5 minutes of it now. And then you come back and you watch 5 more minutes.
I've seen lots of references to Rocky.
I've seen Rocky 4 when he fights the Soviet. Have you seen I will crush you. Have you seen any of the Rocky films?
I saw Rocky 4 in the theater.
You did?
Yeah, my sister. I kept calling it Rocky IV. There was a point in my life I had no concept of Roman numerals, and so I was in my late teens before I realized, wait a minute, Star Wars is in episode 4. What does that mean? And now I'm confused. Like I had this existential crisis as a teenager because I finally knew Roman numerals by then. But yeah, that's how I learned what 4 was, because of Rocky 4. It's like Rocky IV is Rocky 4.
I think Miss Krabappel once said on The Simpsons that now we're going to learn Roman numerals, children, and the reason is so we can know what date movies were made in, or something. And that's
how Bart was able to pick what door he was supposed to go in, because he named all the Rocky movies. And then there was Rocky 7, Balboa's Revenge, or something. I can't remember what.
Who could have thought that? Who would have thought that they're essentially making Rocky sequels even to this day?
Yeah, I hear the last one was good.
Yeah, the last 2 I heard were really good.
Okay, cool.
There was Balboa and the Creed. Were both critically acclaimed movies. So, and hey, the first Rocky movie I believe was nominated for Best Picture, and then there was a few that were kind of they were out there, but they were.
Yeah.
The one thing I remember from Rocky 4, watching it with the Soviet boxer Dolph Lundgren, I believe or Dolph Lundgren or whatever, there's a moment where they have to punch a sensor or something like that to show how hard they punch, and Rocky punches it, or maybe he doesn't, but I know the Soviet punches it and the thing breaks. And I just remember going, oh, he broke it. He broke the thing. I don't know. My whole thing with boxing, I spent a lot more time on Mike Tyson's Punch Out as a kid than watching Rocky. So to me, when Bobby and his coach are out there on the waterfront area with the sunset, I just thought of Mike Tyson's Punch Out more than anything else.
I can see that.
So there's there's a few lines here from On the Waterfront. Marlon Brando has this big, famous monologue. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody.
My night, I could have taken Wilson apart. So what happens? He gets the title shot outdoors in a ballpark, and what do I get? A one-way ticket to Palookaville. You was my brother, Charlie. You should have looked out for me a little bit. You should have taken care of me just a little bit so I wouldn't have to take them dives for the short end money.
Well, I had some bets down for you. You saw some money.
You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody. Instead of a bum, which is what I am. Let's face it.
But right at the beginning, Squid says, you could have been a contender in his little opening lines. Pesto mentions, you're going to get a one-way ticket to Palookaville, which again is from on the waterfront. Is it just me, or did that seagull that was like kind of the referee in the boxing ring?
Okay,
kind of looks like Scuttle. He kind of looked and sounded a little bit like Scuttle from The Little Mermaid.
Yeah, I could see that.
I
think
it might have been just, it could have just been coincidental. I mean, they are kind of like New York, so he's going to have that kind of accent. But I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But there are tons of birds in the background from West Side Pigeons and from the Boyds.
Yeah.
You have those crows or ravens or whatever they were. And of course, like all the sparrows and stuff are there watching these fights. So that was kind of cool to see those little cameos in the background. And of course, Pretty Boy Robin was totally a Sylvester Stallone-ish kind of guy. I mean, he just sounds exactly like him. And in fact, he says, "Hey, Adrian!"
Adrian!
Yo, Adrian! At the very end. So, but when it came to Raging Bull, which the episode itself is called Raging Bird. So Raging Bull, starring Robert De Niro. Of course, Bobby the Pigeon is a parody of Robert De Niro. And I've never seen Raging Bull. Have either of you? Nathan said you've never seen it.
Nothing.
Kelly, seen Raging Bull?
Yes.
Okay, so this has, a few lines right here from Raging Bull, and one that was very not so subtle when it comes to the worst of the use of the word coup.
I was like, oh.
Are you cool with my bird?
What?
Are you cool with my bird?
How could you ask me a question like that?
Just tell me.
I'm not answering that. It's stupid.
I'm gonna ask you again. Are you or are you not?
What? Come on, you're a wacko.
No, this is a wacko.
In Raging Bull, it's Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci, which is very appropriate because in this, Bobby is talking to Pesto. Pesto being a parody of Joe Pesci, of course. But Robert De Niro is not asking if he's been cooing with his bird or anything. He's even asking if he's doing something with his wife.
Cool with my wife.
What?
Cool with my wife.
How could you ask me a question like that? How could you ask me? I'm your brother. You ask me that?
But I was kind of surprised to see that. I mean, I thought it was cute. I thought like, oh wow, okay, that's kind of funny. A little surprising though that they would reference that because again, that's just one of those things that I'm sure they probably got away with pretty easily back in the early 90s, but I don't know if they'd be able to get away with that today on a cartoon. What do you guys think?
Well, they did it with the word Smurf all the time, right? I assume that was always a cuss word, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
You smurfing with me?
You smurfing my bird?
But that's pretty much it. I mean, I really made me actually want to see Raging Bull because it's always been one of those movies. It's a Scorsese film. It's always been one of those films that I always wanted to see. And after seeing this, it made me want to see it a little bit more.
Yeah.
I mean, even Bobby at the end says, "No way I'm going down," which is something that apparently Robert De Niro says in Raging Bull. So, I don't know. Do you guys see any references to any... Kelly, you've actually seen these films. So...
Yeah, but I don't remember them that much. I actually watched Rocky... Because you were right, like it's one of those movies. It'll be on TV, and so you'll catch a little bit of it. But I realized as far as the first original Rocky, I'd never sat down from beginning to end and watched it. And It and Raging Bull and On the Waterfront, I think, are all AFI Top 100 movies. And I'm still going through and trying to watch all of them. But the problem in doing that is sometimes I'll put a movie on and it's like, oh, this is an important movie and I should watch it. And I'll start doing something else, like cross-stitch or get on my computer and don't really give the movies the attention they deserve, and then it's over. And it's like, well, I watched it, but I didn't really get much from it. So, and because neither On the Waterfront or Raging Bull really grabbed my attention,
they're not
I didn't get a whole lot. I liked Rocky. I did pay attention to that. I thought it was really, really good. And, obviously I get where a lot of the references, pop culture references, have come from finally. Because I saw Rocky 4 and I think even 3 before I ever saw the original.
They would have these like marathons of the different Rocky films from time to time, and I would just, it's one of those things that you would tune in, and you can get box sets of Rocky for pretty cheap. I mean, they've been out on the market for a while, so.
You'll never be anything more than a bum, you bum!
Oh, why you call me a bum all the time?
'Cause you're a bum, you bum!
Oh.
Nathan, what are some moments that you particularly liked in this cartoon?
I liked when the god pigeon came and ate all the seeds and left only one for Bobby.
But Bobby was still very happy at the end.
It seemed like,
despite, he was happy.
Sad. Like, I don't know. I thought he would be more upset with just getting one seed and losing his girl. He seemed pretty inspired.
He respects the god pigeon
so much that
a lot.
Yeah, and I did like all the times when Pesto, like the Optimus, when he got Optimus and Optometrist mixed up.
Yes, that was a very funny thing.
Forget about it, Bobby. She'll be back.
Atta bird, Pesto. Always the optimist.
What do you mean by that?
I said you're an optimist.
An optimist? What are you saying, that I'm some kind of doctor here to test your vision for you? That I'm an eyeball inspector? That I make a spectacle of myself? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you look on the bright side, an optimist.
I am an optimist.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's it. Come here.
And even says like, I'm making a spectacle of myself, like spectacles.
So
that's good.
Another like little pun. So that was a fun one.
That was a good fight right there. But it was nice to see an episode of Goodfeathers that just focused on Bobby.
Yeah, Bobby doesn't get his.
No, it's mostly. I mean, most of these are Squit focused because he's the narrator of it and everything, and even Bobby gets the last word on this one too. So it was different. It was nice to see.
Yeah, I like the stories that revolve around Bobby more, I think. Just
why is that?
I think he's just more interested. Squid's like so like complainy and like, but Bobby's just like cool. He's like a leader, and like Pesto is so angry. Just like Bobby's like.
Yeah, one thing I noticed that was weird about Squid was he's talking about go and whack me or something like that, and then first of all, like Squid says something weird like.
Whack him, Pesto. I'd like to see you two-ing around the whacking.
That Squid's eating grass at the statue of Martin Scorsese, and I'm going, since when do pigeons eat grass? I mean, but Squid was just going at it. He was just having tons of grass in his face. I don't know what's going on with that, but Squid, he was really hungry. There was no food, or maybe he just became a vegetarian in this episode. I'm not sure, but
well. Dogs eat grass. Maybe it's the same kind of
maybe
reason.
He's sick.
Yeah.
Poor
Just wasn't
Squid.
feeling well.
Well, let's go ahead and get over to our water tower rating. All right. Kelly, what do you say? How many water towers out of 5 would you give today's episode?
I would give it 3.5. It was overall pretty consistently good episode, and I particularly liked Goodfeathers. So yeah, I liked it, but above average.
Okay, and Nathan, what about you?
I'm gonna go with 3.
3.
I was almost going to give it 2.5 for that. Newsreel the stars, but I'm just going to go for a 3.
You're willing to fast forward it this time?
I'm willing to fast forward the Newsreel the stars and go for a 3. Mostly, I just wish the Warners were nicer to Anchorman at the beginning of the episode, and then I would have liked it a little bit more.
Okay, well... Well, I'm going to give it 4. So we're all over the board on today's episode.
It's an average of 3.5.
There you go. Averaging of 3 on this. 3.5. I'm sorry. Yeah. So it was a nice episode. The violence, I guess, against the Anchorman was a little extreme in some cases, but I don't know. I was still funny. It was one that I honestly forgot about. So it's always refreshing to see these episodes that I'm not as familiar with and are really still funny and they hold up. So there we go. Well, it's that time again. It's time to get to our poll results from last week.
Hello again. This is your announcer, and I'm speaking to you live from a scary place. And why? Well, because today's question was very scary. Listeners were asked, which of these paranormal/otherworldly characters had the funniest interaction with the Warners? #Animaniacs, #Animanicast poll. 11% said Dracula. 26% said Satan. But 63% said it was death. Oh, well, those are the results for this week. And I'm getting out of here because it's scary. See you next week with another poll.
Okay, so guys, which of those 3 supernatural-ish kind of things would you say is your favorite? I think I know what Kelly's going to say, so I'm going to go with Nathan first.
I've got to go with death. Meatballs or consequences, Joey?
Meatballs or consequences. And I'm going to say death as well, because it was a very funny episode. Kelly, which one do you say?
Death, of course. Love meatballs or consequences.
Yeah.
He's just too funny.
It's hard not to love that episode, and just everything about that particular, I guess you could call him a villain, but again, they're not villains. It's like, in many ways, they're just doing their job. And it's the Warners who are antagonizing them. Death, he's just, it was literally, Wacko had a choice in that episode.
Yeah.
He could have stopped.
Meatball or consequence?
The consequence.
And he took the consequence.
Oh, well. But very funny episode, and there we go. Well, let's go ahead and get to our new poll for this week. And Nathan, what's the poll question? What do we got?
All right, we're going to ask you, the listener, what your favorite Goodfeather is.
Ooh.
So we got Squit, we got Bobby, and Pesto.
You know what? Should we put
the God Pigeon in?
Yeah, we'll put the God Pigeon in.
I was thinking that too. I'm like,
we got Twitter allows for 4 options.
I mean, yeah, he's like, I was like, is he a Goodfeather? Or...
I think he's like the boss of the Goodfeathers, right?
He's like the Goodfeather.
Yeah, he's.
Anyways,
yeah.
So yeah,
we'll put the God Pigeon in there too.
So yeah, Squit, Bobby, Pesto, or the God Pigeon.
Very good. So go ahead and head over to twitter.com/Animaniacast, or simply search on Twitter for #Animanicast poll, and you should be able to find that poll and make your voice heard. Well, speaking of making your voice heard, we have some listener feedback. And here's Nathan with the feedback song.
This is the feedback song. This is the feedback song. This is the feedback song, and we're gonna read them now.
Yeah.
Yep. So this first one is from M. Jenkins 091. It says, fun podcast. And then she says, or he says, this podcast is a must listen if you love Animaniacs. I'm glad I discovered it.
Yay. Thank you, M. Jenkins
091.
You're awesome.
And we got another one from Pure Entertainment! !
Wow.
Well, I'm sorry. We got another one from Stinky the One-Eyed Ogre, and it says, pure entertainment, !
Okay.
That makes more sense.
I was going to say, like, wow, what an interesting iTunes handle is pure entertainment.
That might still be open, folks, if you want that to be your iTunes.
If you have not yet got an iTunes account, make it pure entertainment! ! Exclamation point.
So Stinky the One-Eyed Ogre, of course, says, a wonderful podcast that delves into each episode of the Animaniacs cartoon show. Whether you are nostalgic about the Animaniacs or just curious about the period of our pop culture, you will find this podcast both entertaining and insightful. If you have never seen the Animaniacs or its sister shows, Freakazoid and Pinky and the Brain, you will find yourself taken back to the early 90s, when Warner Brothers and Amblin Entertainment produced true comedic gold.
Wow. Stinky, that review did not stink.
Yeah, that was an amazing review. That was the first any of us had heard of it, so.
Well, that is amazing. Thank you so much, folks, for getting those reviews into iTunes, and it really does help the show quite a bit with being visible to other people who might be interested in animation, Animaniacs, and stuff like that. So, again, thank you so much for that. And Nathan, how can people once again put a review on iTunes?
I said it before. Just Google it.
Just Google it.
Yay! Brought to us by Google.
Google.
The proud sponsor of the show, I believe.
Yep, they're paying us. They said their check's in the mail. So we're going to just wait by that mailbox, Google.
Yep. So, if you haven't heard of Google, Google that.
All right. Well, I think it's about time to get to our contact information. So, Nathan, where can people get in contact with you online?
You can find me on Twitter, Joey, as well as anyone else that wants to find me.
I can find you right here in front of me, too.
Well, I'd rather you find me on Twitter.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. At Django FT. That's me.
All right. And Kelly, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter, Yoda Princess, YODAPRNCSS, or email me at kelly@bigshinyrobot.com.
And you can see some of Kelly's writings on bigshinyrobot.com as well.
Yes, the guys have already done a review of it, but I'm supposed to write my own thoughts because I'm the biggest Beauty and the Beast fan ever.
Exactly.
And they want to hear about what I think about the film. So once I see it, and I'll put my thoughts to paper, computer, whatever.
So that should be out now, I guess.
Share those.
Yeah, this episode comes out a week after it comes out, so it'll be out in theaters. So if you've seen it and you want to see what a fellow Beauty and the Beast fan thinks about it, or if you just want to see, forget Rotten Tomatoes. You don't need to see any of that. You got to see the review that really matters, and that's Kelly's review of Beauty and the Beast over at BigShinyRobot.com. Well, if you want to get in contact with the Animanicast, there's several different ways to do it. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, and you can also send us an email, which is animanicast@retrozap.com. And speaking of retrozap.com, you should head over there for cool articles, videos, and multiple podcasts. What podcast, you might say? Well, there's our podcast for one, but there's also the ArgCast, Beltway Banthas, Brews and let me try this again. There's the ArgCast, Beltway Banthas, Brews and Blasters, Classic Marvel Star Wars Comics, The Deucecast Movie Show, Dunecast, Kanata's Castle, The Sandcrawler, Skywalking Through Neverland, Starship, Sabers and Scoundrels, Talking Apes TV, Techno Retro Dads, The Trade Federation, and We Know Nothing. All those different RetroZap feed, podcasts, and you can actually go subscribe to the retrozap.com feed on iTunes. You get every single one of those podcasts delivered for free to your device.
Wow.
I did it. You should too. So
be more like Joey, people.
Oh, please don't. That's a bad idea. Well, with that, I think we're all ready to shut the water tower doors, as it were. And for Nathan and Kelly, this is Joey saying good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast is not endorsed by Warner Brothers or Amblin Entertainment and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Animaniacs, the Warner Brothers logo, all names, pictures, and sounds of the Animaniacs characters or any other Animaniacs-related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Warner Brothers, Amblin Entertainment, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of the Animanicast unless otherwise indicated.
The